meeting of the Finance Committee. It is March 31st, Wednesday, 2021. Tonight, we're going to be meeting with Chief Kevin Gallagher from Fire and EMS and Chief Chris Richmond from the Police Department. Do I have a motion to open the meeting?
Motion to open, please.
Second, is there a second?
Yes.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are open. Yeah, so as I previously stated, tonight, we're going to do a couple of budget hearings. We also originally had Dan Menard from the DPW, but he can't make it tonight, so we'll be meeting with him next week. So tonight, we'll start off with Chief Gallagher. So whenever you're ready to go, Chief, you can have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. The instructions that we received from the Board of Selectmen and from the Finance Committee was to submit a FY22 department request that was as close to level funded as possible. And that's what you have before you. The operational budget is, except in one area, level funded. And the salaried line items are reflecting either contractual cost of living adjustments or will once those decisions are made by the Board of Selectmen. So you'll see a 2% increase in full-time salaries for the 8 full-time firefighter paramedics. We're at full speed once again. That's contractual. They're in the 3rd year of their contract. And a subsequent 2% increase also in overtime. What's missing is any adjustment above the FY21 town meeting appropriation for the fire chief, the call firefighters, and the part-time employees. We're still waiting for the Board of Selectmen to provide direction on that. That'll be plugged in at a later date. Otherwise, Julie, do you want to speak to the assistant accountant? I know that came up last night.
Yeah, the only thing with that is it'll be adjusted based on what the COLA is, and with the new employee there for this year, it'll be slightly lower, even with a COLA increase. So we'll make sure that whatever number is in there is accurate when we go through at the end and check everybody out.
On the operations side of the budget, everything is level funded. There are no increases in the amount of money we're asking for the repair of a fire engine or the purchase of paper clips. We're keeping it steady. This year, I will be honest with you, this year's budget is a little out of whack because of COVID and the availability of CARES funding to cover medical supplies that are COVID related that also overlap to our day-to-day operations. So the federal government has been, for example, the town of Acushnet hasn't paid for gloves or masks in over a year. Everything that we're using is coming from the COVID side of the house. And there's other examples of that as well. So hopefully, the virus goes away soon and we can get back to normal. We won't need any federal funding. We then in future years may need to tweak some of these operational line items. But right now I'm confident that we'll be able to address the needs of fiscal year 22 with the same money appropriated in fiscal year 21. The only change, the only request that was approved yesterday by the Board of Selectmen is for the assessment center. We had no funds for an assessment center provided last year, and we're looking for $4,000 for this year. The reason for that is my career. I'm on the back nine. I'm in the sunset of my career. I'm, waiting for the credits to roll, whatever metaphor you want to use. I've got a limited shelf life, and it is prudent to start the process of grooming the next level of leadership within the fire department. So the contract that the firefighters have, the full-time firefighter paramedics, has a position in it for a full-time captain. This was negotiated 2 years ago. So the position is there. There's a very detailed job description. There's a rate of pay that has been changing from fiscal year to fiscal year, even though we don't have the position. And the idea behind that is I've been without a second in command. There hasn't been a fire chief in the town that's had a second in command. It's just not part of our structure. We're busy enough now. We're large enough now. We're doing so many different tasks now that it is wise soon to bring on an officer position, a full-time officer position, who would work day shifts to start to allow me to mentor that person, to introduce them to all the administrative aspects of the fire department, so that when my job is done, there's someone who comes in the very next day and nothing gets dropped. That person, it won't necessarily be your next chief. That's a decision for the Board of Selectmen to make. But at least there'll be continuity in the leadership ranks. So the assessment center is an outside, independent, private vendor that would come in and through a series of written tests and oral component based on scenarios, would rank those who are eligible for the captain's position and then provide me with a list. And given the structure, the fact that the fire chief in Acushnet is under the law considered the strong chief, I will be making that promotion. And then when I leave, the Board of Selectmen will be appointing the next fire chief. We're no longer in civil service. The incumbents still are, but any promotions or any new employees are not in civil service any longer. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen, for our operating budget. If you have any questions. I wasn't on mute the whole time, was I?
No.
Like, that would be a perfect way to end the day I'm in.
Chief, do you have any articles that you'll be presenting?
I do. Thank you for asking. There are, whoops, did I just lose you?
No. No, we got you.
All right, sorry about that. If you just give me 1 second so I can see everybody. Yes, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 articles. The first is our self-contained breathing apparatus. And I will be honest with you, this I considered my last heaviest lift, to update and upgrade all of the air tanks, which I did the first year when I came in as chief, through a federal grant. We've applied to the Assistance for Firefighter grant for a considerable amount of money, over $300,000, to replace all of our soon-to-be obsolete SCBAs, the self-contained breathing apparatus, and the air tanks that support them. They have a shelf life. They need to go once that shelf life is met. We have with some of them about 18 months, with others a little over 2 years to get these replaced. So our first attempt will be through this grant program, which purchased the tanks that are now becoming obsolete. And it requires a 5% match. So I'm asking for consideration of a placeholder to appropriate to authorize the spending of $14,899, which would be the 5% match of the much larger federal grant in the event that we get that grant. If we don't, this money obviously won't be used. And we will then regroup and come back and talk to you about the dire need that we have in other funding mechanisms. But this is the top of the list as far as equipment needs for the department at this time. The second is to replace, and these are kind of in my order of preference and in priority, the furnace at Station 2 up on Main Street in the North End is held together with bubble gum and baling twine. I am surprised that it has lasted as long as it has. I couldn't give you a date of how old it is, but it is extremely old. And we have a very good oil burner technician who cares for it. He has pieced this thing together in ways that amaze us, and he doesn't have any more rabbits in his hat. So the cost for that is $9,286. The third, also at Station 2, is the fire alarm panel. We have we have detectors there. Remember, this is an unstaffed building, so we don't have any eyeballs on it for a good amount of time. So without the panel, which is broken, it's in desperate need of replacement. Those detectors would only sound internally and hope that somebody recognizes it when they drive by. Otherwise, when we get this panel fixed, it would ring in at the fire station, that's Station 1. So it's monitored. And also at the police station, we have redundant systems there. So for the protection of the fire apparatus that's in there, in the building itself and the asset for the town, that needs to be replaced. And the cost of that is $2,315. And then finally, we're also at the point where, based on standards, the NFPA standards, we need to start replacing our hose. It is out of cycle with the NFPA. It's beyond its useful life. So we're looking at state grants that we are somewhat optimistic that we're going to be able to get, which is a $15,000 grant. That's going to allow us to start the replacement process of the hose. But to complete that, to replace everything that is now obsolete, would require $9,000 from the town. So in addition to what we would spend out of the 15 on hose, we'd need an additional 9 to replace all the hose that needs to be taken out of service. So those are my 4 articles for town meeting.
Okay,
That's it.
thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Does anybody have any questions for Chief Gallagher?
Chief, I got one question for you. On the first item we talked about, the breathing apparatus,
Yes.
if we don't get the grant, are there other options for grants? Or,
So the grant that we're looking at acknowledges the bind that we're in,
Mhm.
where these packs are going to be obsolete, and if they're not replaced, then we're stuck. And it's not a piece of equipment that maybe you can stretch it out an extra 6 months to a year after it meets its end of life date. It truly needs to go because it's the most important piece of equipment we have, with a tremendous amount of if it's not code compliant. So we would have the option. We're thinking that we stand a very good chance of getting this. It's a priority for the federal government, and firefighter Tom Fallon really rolled up his sleeves and we crafted what we think is an extremely strong grant. We'll be hearing about that well after town meeting. But in the event that we don't get it, time is against us. And one of the options, I'll just be honest with you, one of the options is to come to you and look for, bond this, just purchase it outright and bond it.
and that's exactly why I'm asking the question, Chief. So we need to prepare ourselves that might be an ask in the next fiscal year.
Down
Is
the
it,
road.
or you're thinking kind of, special town meeting in October, November? Next
Well,
year?
there's a turnaround time to acquire these pieces, but I think that we have at least a year.
Okay,
We
so
may
this
be
time
having a
next,
conversation next year.
gotcha. Okay, thank you.
So Chief, this apparatus is something that the firefighters depend on and utilize if they're going into let's say a burning building?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yep. The firefighters are trained. Any call that we go on that potentially has fire components, smoke, gas, flame, heat, the packs go on, and then before they enter that environment, they're putting on the air packs.
Well, if there's no other questions for the chief, Chief Gallagher, thank you for presenting your budget. Great job. And a special thank you to all your efforts in coordinating all the COVID testing. during this past year. I mean, you've done an outstanding job, and I know I appreciate it, and I know all the residents appreciate all the outstanding work you and your team have done for all our residents. It's a great job.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is a absolutely wonderful team. And, you know, you folks know this better than most. And I'm looking at Julie and I'm looking at Melissa. You know, we're the ones that are conducting the tests and talking with the residents. We're the ones that they see. But for every action we take, there's 10 actions behind the scenes that if they weren't done well and competently, we wouldn't be able to pull this off. So kudos to the finance department for, you know, they were just living their happy life, and then all of a sudden had this whole CARES and COVID testing and reporting systems, you know, dumped on them as well. And everyone in Acushnet on the government side has stepped up, and it's a wonderful team effort.
I
We
agree.
appreciate it, Chief. Thank you.
Okay, y'all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take it easy on Chief Richmond.
All right, we will.
Have a
Okay.
good night.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Chief.
Any promises?
Okay, so next, Chief Richmond, you are up to bat and you can present your budget to us.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. What a difference a year makes. Seems like just yesterday I was before you, back in the first week of October of 2020, just getting my feet under me, only to have you know, the rug yanked out from under myself as COVID did to everybody else. Just want to start with a little bit of what I did with the FY21 budget, and I'll roll right into the FY22 budget, go line by line, and if you don't mind indulging me. The FY21 budget, which I had presented to you in March of 2020, pretty much followed the same model that we had followed the year before. A couple of things that were in there that didn't make the final cut because of COVID and a couple other adjustments. The budget I presented before the Finance Committee and also the Selectmen in early March before COVID had $50,000 in academy salaries that we were going to use to replace the 2 full-time positions that we were short. And it also included about $21,000 in academy equipment costs for those 2 full-time offices, as well as the 3 part-time offices that we intended on hiring. Well, when COVID came, you know, we were instructed, you know, across the board to try to cut, well, first level fund to FY20 on the expense side, but actually to present like a 5% cut. And what I did right off the bat, independent of the 5% cut to expenses, is I looked at the availability of academies. I looked at the personnel we had here, had already hired, and we had a part-timer that had a full-time academy that was high up on our list that we were going to get to, that we could hire at no cost when the time came. And I figured if we needed to hire the second one, that with some due diligence and some frugalness, we could absorb that cost into the cost of into the existing budget. As far as the part-timers, when we had hired 4 part-timers in December of 19, shortly after I took over. But the way that process works with civil service, they have to go to a part-time academy. We wanted to hire 5. We were able to hire 4. Of those 4, one of them was unable to commit to the rigors of the part-time academy. So we only ended up with 3, and that was and we pretty much exhausted our civil service list. So my thought was, if we really didn't need the additional 3 part-timers at that point, if we were gonna get the full-timers. And if we were to hire part-timers at that time, we would have been really digging down on the list. So I thought it'd be prudent to let's focus our efforts on the full-timers. So we ripped the 50,000 in academy salaries to 21,000 in equipment out. That was about 71,000. In addition, to comply with the request of the town, in looking at the least damaging to the operations of the police department, based on the condition of our vehicle fleet at the time, the easiest cut was to purchase 1 cruiser instead of 2 cruisers. Traditionally, in the past more than 5 or 6 years at least, we've been purchasing 2 cruisers a year. So as we go through, we cycle through them, you know, in 4 or 5 years. When we're getting rid of cruisers, they're definitely north of 100,000 miles, and they've outlived their life. But based on a number of circumstances, we felt we could get by with 1 cruiser. So we cut the vehicle purchase line item in half. But the only other thing we did at that time is in anticipation of using some of the vehicles more often, we upped the vehicle maintenance line item for FY21. At the end of the day, we ended up cutting our expenses by about 7 or 8%. So we came in a little above of what the town requested. As we went into FY21 and looking to purchase a vehicle, the quote that we had was initially from a large dealership in the central part of the state, via the state bid. And the pricing we had on it was kind of a one-step shopping, so to speak, whereas we want package A for the cruiser, where we were only purchasing one. We opted to go, and by we, I mean really Sergeant Mike Mattin really did our due diligence and looked at other options that were available to us via the state bid. And instead of one-stop shopping and going to this one company that did everything from purchase the cruiser and install the radio, install the lights, we kind of broke it up and we purchased the cruiser from one dealership and we brought it to what's called an upfitter, which does the radios, the lights, and installs the cages and things of that nature, makes a normal car a cruiser. And by doing that, we were able actually to save about $9,000 off what was allocated for the vehicle last year. As we roll into 2022, we, again, as Chief Gallagher said, try to come as close to level funded as FY21 as we could. And I tried, but in looking at it in the condition of our vehicles, we really need to go to 2 vehicles this year. We have 2 cruisers, one in excess of 100,000, one in excess of 120,000 miles. So we really need to replace those. So in anticipation of that, we did, again, we got our good prices, good solid prices, and we're looking at increasing the vehicle line item, from what it was last year to 99.4. So it's about, you're looking at about just about 49,000 and change for 2 new vehicles, Mark cruisers, frontline cruisers. That's a pretty good price. We lose a little bit of wiggle room with trade-ins because I had a conversation with Jerry Bergeron from EMA, and he's looking to upgrade one of his vehicles. One of the 2, even though it's high mileage that we have, would be suitable for his needs to replace something that he already has. So we wouldn't be we don't get much in trade anyway on our vehicles because of mileage and wear and tear. I believe that the town would get, 10 or 20 fold its value by turning it over to EMA for their use in support of town projects. Other than that, I'll start with expenses and I'll jump up to salaries real quick. Other than that, the only increases you may see on the expense line items are going to be clothing allowances, contractual, software, repair and maintenance on the software. That's an increase. Those are maintenance agreements or licensing agreements for the various software programs that we use to run the police department. If we were to get the 2 cruisers, I reduced the vehicle maintenance bill line item back to the 16,000 that it was in FY20. So that's pretty much the expenses. I mean, you look at them, they are what they are. Most departments in the town, most of the money is already spoken for. There's very little, I guess, what you would call discretionary funding or something that's not 100% spoken for on the expense line items. Jumping up to salaries, the only change in the salaries up there are my salary based on contract and would be the increase in longevity, which is contractual. The dispatch and the police unions are in the last year of the contract. They expire on June 30th. So we were advised to just leave that level funded and we would address it as the town sees fit once those contracts are settled. And that's pretty much it. We were in fact able to absorb, like we were looking to hire the 2 full-timers last year. We hired the officer that had the full-time academy already at no cost to us. And we have an officer in the full-time academy now, which we were able to, as of right now, we were able to absorb the cost to send him to the academy into the current budget. And he'll be coming out in late May of this year. So staffing wise, we're in pretty good shape. Knock on wood, I'm probably going to jinx myself by saying that. Next civil service exam is going to be in June. Usually it's in March, and we're getting a list somewhere around September, October, whereas in June, I don't anticipate seeing a list until October, November-ish. That being said, I'm not sure what my intention is based on a lot of new requirements that have come out of the police reform that passed in December. The amount of training that's required of a part-timer is increased significantly. So when it comes time to start hiring again, the town is probably going to want to give serious thought to moving away from hiring part-time officers, just because there's just such a tremendous commitment. And there's a lot of money that's spent, and we lose candidates. Well, I should say there's a lot of money that's spent training them, but the part-time program as we run it now, the part-timers are responsible for their own tuition for the academy, which is about $1,500 currently at 370 hours, responsible for their own books. And they attend class 3 nights a week and every Saturday for about 5 months on their own at their own cost, while in most cases managing a full-time job or other obligations. When they get out, they require another 56 hours of firearms training as it stands now, and then plus another probably month or two of field training with officers here. With the police reform, the preliminary curriculum we've seen for what they're calling a bridge academy, which all our part-timers that we have now are going to have to go to, is looking at another 200 to 250 hours. So at the end of the day, the part-time academy in a year is probably going to be somewhere around 600 hours, whereas a full-time academy, you're probably looking a 775 to 800. So that's a conversation to have later, but that's kind of where we're going now. But we're by getting the officer in the academy, we're actually, I won't say we're ahead of the game, but we're in real good shape, as of May, provided, we don't have any unforeseen circumstances. We can absorb, we do have anticipated retirement in the upcoming fiscal year. Nothing official, nothing in writing, but based on the fact that the gentleman has a countdown on his cell phone to retirement, I'm pretty sure it's coming. So we'll be able to absorb that with the gentleman that's going to be coming out of the academy.
Chief, how many hours a week do part-timers typically work?
It varies. Right now, to be honest with you, we have 2 part-timers right now. One of them is still in training from last year because he was in an academy that started in January that was due to graduate in June. COVID came, the academy got delayed. He didn't graduate till September. He then had to go through a battery of testing, psych testing, medical screening, drug screening, a physical aptitude test before he was able to actually come to work for us. And I believe he worked 1 shift and then contracted COVID, unrelated. So he was out of the picture for a little while. The other part-timer we have has been with us for probably 20 plus years. And he's probably good for 1 or 2 shifts a week. That's probably realistically is where they fall, probably 1 or 2 shifts a week.
Chief, do the part-timers get benefits at all?
No, they contractually, their wages and salary, obviously covered by the contract, but they're not collecting health insurance or, contributing to retirement or anything like that. Though they do have the ability to, once they become full-time, to buy their part-time time back, through the retirement system, but they don't collect any benefits outside of the contract. They get a clothing allowance. I believe that would be about it. Nothing that's long-term.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for the chief? Bob?
Chief, do you foresee any new safety equipment you're going to be having to get with this COVID thing, and any new expenses like that, safety equipment of any kind?
Well, we've I'll say this is thank God for Chief Gallagher, because he's made my job tremendously easier. We've been able to procure pretty much everything that we need through him, and via the CARES grants. As far as masks and gloves, we're pretty well stocked right now. We have the temperature kiosks in the front and the rear of the station for the public and for the officers coming in that take the body temperature. We have the disinfectant, the fogger, the industrial fogger, where we regularly disinfect the common areas and the cruisers and whatnot. I don't anticipate having to buy anything COVID related. I would say the biggest maybe anticipated cost, and I couldn't tell you what it is is the amount of training that's going to be required as a result of the police reform passing. And I can't tell you what that number is. I know that, the one part-timer that we have, well, the two part-timers that we have at some point before the end of the upcoming fiscal year are going to have to attend bridge training if they want to remain certified or employed as police officers. But that, the discussions are still being had at the state level and by the MPTC, which is the Municipal Police Training Committee that's kind of overseeing all the training. It's still a work in progress. The law was put through and a lot of details are still being worked out. So I anticipate costs in the upcoming years related to training. We were lucky enough this past year and have been lucky enough in past years to supplement our training line item with a grant from the E911 state E911 department, because the $15,000 that you see in training, really, when it comes down to it, the vast majority of that, if we weren't able to get that grant from 911, that would all go to mandated 911 training for our telecommunicators up front, people answering the phone. But we're able to get a significant grant from them last year. My hope is that we get it again this year. We have traditionally, but with COVID, it's a wild card right now as to what's going to be available to us.
Thank you, Chief. That would be my next question about getting grant money, but you just answered it for me. So thank you very much.
We were pretty lucky this past year in that we got the 911 grant between training and salary reimbursement. Both grants are probably somewhere in the vicinity. We're sitting on probably about $50,000 in salary reimbursement that will be coming into this fiscal year, FY21, as a result of that grant, and about $9,000 worth of training fees, like what you have to pay for the classes, which is really going to help us. I was able to secure a grant for about $16,000 in the fall to procure some protective equipment for the officers that were required by contract that we haven't had in probably since the infamous Popak riots of the 1970s, early 1970s. So I was able to replace that, and we're also in the process of purchase some bicycles with that grant money. It was earmarked for bicycle patrol, figuring it'd be useful at the park and some of the paths that are being bike paths and walking paths and things of that nature. So we were lucky with that. We're also, again, we were awarded the bulletproof vest grant, so we're able to vest our officers. It's a reimbursable grant, but so we got to spend the money first, then be reimbursed. But it's something that we've gotten here pretty much since I've been employed here in 25 years to replace all the vests for the officers on a regular basis. And we also were lucky enough during this past year. Again, we had a lot of luck, despite it being COVID. We had a generous donation by a town resident of $6,000 to us that helped us purchase some additional equipment that we needed. That we probably never would have been able to afford in a normal year. So the stars seem to line up this year. I can tell you, I might be odd, but I actually enjoy the grant process. If there's money there and I got to write something to try to get it, I actually enjoy that because I get the competitive juices get flowing. And so my intention is, we got about just over $100,000 this past year total. My hope is to just continue to write the grants as we get them. So I've written 3 of them and they seem to get a little easier each time. So I'm going to stay on top of that and do my best to supplement whatever we have with whatever monies are available.
Anybody else have any questions for Chief? No, easy night for you, Chief. Yeah, your budget's pretty straightforward. We appreciate, the effort you made, and especially with the grant work that you're doing as well. And I know going forward, that'll certainly help. So if we have any questions before we deliberate, we'll reach out. But this looks good so far.
Thank you very much. Like I said, my invitation extends to each and every one of you at any time. If you want to give me a call, I would say stop by, but I don't know how comfortable you are with the situation. But on an individual basis, if there's any questions or concerns on anything in the budget or anything regarding costs, I will say this. I'm going to say this because I got the question was asked of me last year, and I still remember this. It was Ms. Delgado that asked me about the overtime budget. last year in early March, and we had expended the overtime budget at that point, more than expended it. I believe we were probably about 130,000, 130, I'm sorry, about 130% of what was there. And I believe my answer had something to do with, well, the budget model, the funds were based on a staffing level that we hadn't achieved. We have kind of achieved it for this fiscal year. It's been a challenge on the dispatch side to some degree, but we've been able to absorb some absences and whatnot. And I can tell you that we're in much better shape than we were last year. There is still money in the overtime budget as we enter the fourth quarter, and anticipating the salary reimbursement, the money coming back to the salaries line item in the next month or two. We should be in decent shape, much better than we were last year. But last year wasn't probably a good example. But I just figured I'd throw that out there.
Making me feel bad, Chief.
No, that's fine. I just, I knew it was bad. I knew it was bad coming in, and I can tell you honestly that we knew that the budget was adopted with certain, understanding that we'd have certain people in place, and we really didn't have them in place until really April of last year. And then we've had a little bit of a challenge on the dispatch side, maintaining the full-time dispatches, but it's actually been for a positive reason because we've hired good candidates that have moved on. One of them worked for us for a good for about 6 months, is in a full-time police academy for another community now. Another one went to a state corrections academy. He's going to stay on a part-time basis. So we've been through a couple of dispatches in the last year. We have our stalwarts, Sunokon and Alan Bowen, who I wouldn't trade for anybody. But the other two positions we've rotated, and we have 3 of them filled now. We have 3 of the 4 are filled, and the 4th one is the replacement's being trained. So we're moving along, and it's kind of trying to find the round peg to go in the round hole. But truth be told, our budget is, 95% or better spent on personnel, and that's where the time needs to be spent, is getting the right people in the right jobs. So
Thank you, Chief.
okay, thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
You too.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay, Julie, you got any update? I know there was a lot of I got a few emails from Kathy with some updates with regards to budgets. So anything new for us?
No, this is such a weird year because normally you guys we'd all be in the building and we could just, I print everything out for you and you add it to your budget book. So it's really hard to get updates to you, and I hate to scan them, but I don't know what else to do for you guys. So those are all the updates, changes that have been made. And, with the suggestion of the Board of Selectmen, I added another column on that front cover sheet for you guys so that you could see the amount, as we make changes. There's like a front cover sheet that kind of shows these are all the changes that have been made, on this tab, this is the reason. But I added 2 more columns so you could see the amount that changed for that department, and then also the net deficit that we have because of it. Because I know, when we started out, I think it was like $143,000 deficit. So you can kind of follow the track of what's happened to get to where we are now. So hopefully that's helpful for you guys too, as you're looking through everything.
So Julie,
aside from
469 now then. That's the number.
Yeah.
That's the latest.
What is it?
Was that figure?
Oh, 469,309. Is that the number you're looking for, John?
I tuned out for a minute. It's not me, it's the computer.
469,309, I think is the number. That's the latest.
So that's the latest operating budget deficit.
Yep.
Okay,
Is
so
that
now,
including 1.5% increases?
that's we haven't done any COLA increases yet for non-union.
What would it be if would you know offhand?
Yes, let's dig that out. Let's see. I did out the 1% for you. So it's a rough estimate too, because there's a lot of different numbers that can get plugged in. So if I look at all departments, including the unions that haven't been negotiated right now, a 1% is about $43,000 for the town side, not, the school's already done theirs. This would be any of the town COLAs that haven't been plugged in yet. 1% would be about 43,000.
Is that what it's gonna be, 1%?
No, I don't think so. But I know you guys were looking at a 1% just so you could kind of do it out.
Right. So then if it's 2, we know it's 86, that sort of
Right.
thing. So we can mentally think about it. So realistically, somewhere like 43, 86, maybe, 110, 115-ish, depending on how high it goes.
And how about with all the articles?
Well, there's a lot of requests for articles. Where I don't, well, I shouldn't say, I'm still plugging in all of the numbers. I mean, we're gonna have about like $1.6 million in free cash this year, and we've said, I think we've said it in our past meetings, it's kind of an artificially high number because of COVID. We had free cash. You guys know we didn't spend all our free cash last year, and carried a bunch forward for the fall. And even at the fall town meeting, we didn't appropriate all of our free cash. We had about 330 or 350,000 left that we didn't appropriate in the fall. That's kind of part of that number. And the CARES money that we received at the end of the fiscal year, we got a little under $200,000 of CARES money that offset a lot of our operational expenses. So we're typically in like the $1 million to $1.2 million of free cash, and that's really where we ended up. But the extra money to get us to the 1.6 was kind of due to those two things. We have a lot of capital requests. I don't know what the selectmen, at our next meeting next week, we're going to go through them. So hopefully we'll be able to whittle everything down and get that to, I'll get you guys that right away. But I know if I'm looking at the capital requests only for the town side, it's about $788,000 just on capital requests. And on the school side, they put in about $361,000 in capital requests. And then there are other articles that hit, the free cash, the school's looking for their $100,000 to their reserve funds that they've done. Let me see, there are a few others. I'm still finishing plugging it all in so you guys could see how much of a deficit it would put us in. But I mean, there's definitely a lot that's being put around in the warrant articles. And then I think the other piece of it too, I have on here, we didn't get to contribute anything last year to OPEB. And we've been trying to do 100,000 every year to OPEB, and we missed that last year. And I think that's a really important thing for us to start putting back into. Our credit rating we talked about before, that was rated high because we are contributing to our OPEB. And I think a 1-year COVID, delay is kind of understandable, but I think we need to get back on track with that. I'd like to put money into stabilization. I think these are all things too to discuss, saving some money for next year, in case we still don't have an answer from the state on what they're going to give us for revenue. So I don't necessarily want to spend the full amount either, or we take the extra and put it into stabilization like we typically do. So it's definitely going to be a packed warrant with a lot of money articles in it. And I'll get that to you as soon as I can. I have like a draft together, but the selectmen are just going to finish reviewing it and hopefully vote it on Tuesday so that you guys will have it Tuesday night.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to err on the side of caution and be as conservative as we can, since we don't know what we're getting from the state. And there's quite a few unknown variables here. So it's gonna be pretty challenging and pretty tight, to say the least.
Mhm.
So,
I agree. And I think it's, we talked in our last meeting with the school about having that joint meeting. I think that's still definitely something that's in the works. And I think it would be the 3 groups again together, the school committee, the finance committee, and the selectmen, to kind of talk through what they're thinking, because, if they're gonna, if they can use their access for capital articles and we're all on the same page, we can pull those off the warrant, and go from there. But I do think that's an important conversation that we still need to have.
As far as time frame, Julie, do you think we're gonna have enough time to like have another joint meeting with them? Because we still have to meet with Dan from the DPW now, which I think is pushed off until next week. So that's April 7th. So if we can go through like a timeline here of when everything has to be done. So next week is gonna be Dan. And so when are you gonna need, what's your, latest deadline that you're gonna need this warrant?
I have that the warrant needs to be approved by the selectmen by the 23rd of April. Let me just check. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, the 23rd. The 23rd would just give us time to get it printed for that following Monday, the 26th. So, I mean, there's not a lot of time. It feels like everything went by really fast. We had it all planned out and we've been having meetings all along, but it goes by really quickly. So there's not a ton of time.
So yeah, so looking at this, we would potentially have to meet during school vacation week.
Mhm.
I think we're gonna have to. I don't think there's any other way around it.
Yep.
I hope we can get as many people there as we can. So next week would be just Dan.
It would be Dan, and then I can at least give you a rough go at the articles to kind of like walk through them quickly.
Okay, that'd be helpful.
Yeah. Yep. And then you have those next 2 weeks, if you meet during school vacation week, you'd have those next 2 weeks to bring in people and kind of talk through whatever articles and make a decision.
Yeah, because then that on 4/21, which will be the last Wednesday, we would have to take all our votes on the budget. Everything would have to be done that meeting. So we'll have to, but I want us to have a heads up as far as what direction we're going before we even get into that meeting, because that could take a long time if we don't know, necessarily what we're thinking. So, yeah, it's gonna be tight.
Julie, is the school committee going back to their budget and after last week's discussion, doing anything to it, or are they going to stick to that budget?
They voted the budget, so they're sticking to it as far as I know. But the finance committee is able to give their own recommendation for the warrant on what they want for every budget.
Mhm.
So, I mean, and if you feel like you're going to change something, I think it would be helpful to approach them earlier so that, maybe we can work with them together if there is something that you're looking to change. But they voted it. They already had the public hearing on it and they voted it. So I don't think they're going to be changing anything.
To me, I'd like to get some of the answers that they weren't able to answer last week. Like specifically how their 8 items that they've prioritized as top priorities still need to be prioritized.
So maybe we should invite them to the meeting next week.
Yeah.
Since we only have Dan coming in, maybe get those questions out of the way with the school next week. And then the following week is when we'll take our votes and that's going to be it.
I can't see the new hires that they're trying to bring in there. That don't make any sense to me at all.
Well, it's something definitely, yeah, we're going to need to discuss that for sure.
Well, I think the other piece that should be discussed with them, and again, I think this is part of like an overall kind of meeting with everyone. They talked about the ESSER grant, and I haven't done a whole lot of research into it, but just looking at it quickly, as with all the CARES grants, and Mel can attest to this, it can't be stuff that you've budgeted for. It has to be unplanned, unbudgeted. You can't, if we know that we needed to replace, part of our HVAC going into, FY 20 or 21, we couldn't just say like, oh, great, let's apply for CARES for this, because they would look and say like, oh, no, you already have this in your plan, you already budgeted for it, whatever. So it's not eligible. If we budget for some of those positions for FY 22, they're most likely not going to be able to be covered by that ESSER grant, but they could be. So I think we need to have some kind of discussion about those positions. And if there are positions like the maintenance ones that are, when I looked quickly, maintenance was something that was covered by the grant. If those are going to be covered by the grant, they shouldn't be part of our operational budget, because then they won't qualify, because we would have budgeted for them. They would have been planned and budgeted for. So I think that's part of the conversation that we need to have as well, if we're looking to pull something because we can cover it from the ESSER grant. Or, we don't think it's needed at all, but if it's because it could be covered by the ESSER grant, we should definitely do that. I think it's in our best interest to do that.
Yeah, and also last week during the meeting, something came up with regards to the school having a surplus in their budget. And that was unexpected for me. And I wasn't totally aware of that.
Yeah, they have
Maybe I
about
should-
$700,000.
What was that?
It's about $700,000 excess for this year.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Where do they, where are they keeping that money? Where is it?
I think, it's been a while since Kristen gave us an update. She was coming to the selectmen's meetings and updating us. They've had a lot of savings with things like transportation, which is what happened last year. They had about $400,000 to $500,000 excess last year as well. And a big part of that is transportation. I think there are salaries that they saved in. I'm not confident to say everything, but they're sitting, their special education costs for students that they had planned to be, transporting and putting in other placements that they're not doing anymore. So in a typical year, with like people coming in and going out, they could have a surplus of, 200,000 at the most. I think I've seen where, it's unforeseen, people leave, people come in, whatever. But 700,000 is unprecedented.
Yeah, that's a big amount.
It's unprecedented, Julie, and they were not transparent, at least with this committee. I think Sue brought up the surplus. They didn't. What's that about?
Yeah. And so when I joined in on a budget subcommittee meeting within the last month, and we kind of talked about that. And I said, I think, again, because this is unprecedented, it should be something that's discussed with the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen. And I know they've been keeping this on their agendas for their school committee meetings, but where it's such a large amount of money, I think it's important to have the conversation with us. And they're very open to it. But the worry, not the worry, but it's $700,000. There's a lot that you can do with that. And I think we all need to be on the same page if they're looking to use it for those capital articles that they, currently have on the warrant that we could pull off. And I know in the meeting they talked about, well, not everything is something that they could buy for this year. Well, if it's something that we all agree on, they could turn back that money. And I know it's like, it's one hand, helping the other. Like if they turn it back, it would be certified free cash for next year. But that would all, I think we could all agree that, well, if they turn it back and it becomes free cash for next year, we're still okay with them using that free cash this year. Or we could agree or not agree, but at least we all have the conversation to get on the same
But
page.
Julie, it's obviously a lot easier for us to agree when their cash is there, as opposed to having to vote to approve all those capital expenditures and the cash is gone, right? Like,
Right.
At the end of the day, I get it. And I know everyone's protective of their budget, but at the end of the day, this is the residents' money, and we need to be careful about how we're spending it, right? Like, and I get the school, and I honestly think last week's meeting did not go the way they thought it was going to go. When it was like, oh, it was only a 2.6% increase. Well, yeah, but you got to balance Old Colony's $250,000 increase And that's for absolutely no asks other than level fund everything. So, you know, we need to balance, and I can't see schools getting $700,000 extra and just and not reviewing and not being super detailed and getting the calculators and pencils and looking at that, like, because, you know, police is
agree.
right, they need 2 vehicles, right? They helped us last year, and now, you know, we need to give them 2 vehicles, and, you know, EMS and all of that. So other people have asks that we need to balance in here too. So, you know.
Right. And the other thing that I, brought up was every year you build your budget on your last year, right? So I think, again, a big part of the conversation should be, where did the 700,000 from this year come? And you're building your 2.6% budget for next year on that. And I do think that a lot of the stuff that led to that surplus is not in effect for next year. Hopefully the students are all going to be back full time. The transportation will be back. So a lot of but again, it's having the conversation so that we're all assured that, okay, so that 700,000 isn't going to be here next year, and you're going to get free reign to do whatever you want with it again next year. It's going to be spent up, and this is a one-time thing. But again, you're the finance committee. We're looking at major one-time revenue. You guys should be part of the conversation.
Yeah, question. They're applying the savings in tuition to their present budget. That means that 2.6% increase, that's really not a real figure, is it? In a sense, if you apply that savings to the budget, it's a higher percentage increase. Would you say
a $500,000 decrease on tuition and the transportation and all of that. So I think it was like just shy of a $400,000 increase over last year. But if you eliminate the tuition, those decreases, it's a $900,000 increase. Right? That's how I look at it.
That's
right?
the way I look at it. Yes.
Okay. So.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying that those positions aren't necessary, but it would be helpful if you're going to ask for, 8 priorities, that you can at least prioritize those priorities too. So that way we understand, like, is your number 1 priority building-based subs? Is it interventionists? Is it reading specialists?
Right.
Like, I think it's fair for us to be asking those types of questions,
I agree.
Well, yeah, the question I would have, they already had a curriculum person, and the person left. It appears to me that type of approach probably isn't working. You follow me?
Yeah.
Something
again,
went wrong, and I like to see analysis of why that person left and
Well-
what progress was made.
Well, I think they have
We put
pretty,
money into it.
well, they have pretty awful curriculum, John, for one thing.
I'm wondering why you've come to that conclusion. You know what I'm saying? I'm not so sure that's. I want to take another look at some of the MCAS scores and compare them with, say, a Ford Junior High. Compare them with some of the other like communities. I'm not, it was very cursory, the presentation of the MCAS, and I couldn't make heads or tails of it, to tell you the truth.
Well, they were comparing it to the state. You asked about comparing it to like-sized communities, which they apparently have, but didn't share. So maybe that's something we pursue with them.
And also, if most of our students are going to Fairhaven High, and we hear anecdotally that our students aren't prepared, where a few years ago we were hearing that their students were well prepared over Fairhaven students. So I like to compare for junior highs, Fairhaven's MCAS scores with our kids as they're coming in, to see if in turn if our students are really ill prepared.
I can't remember from last week's meeting, but did they say anything about the type of the new curriculum that they're adopting, where it's from, you know, what are the foundations of it? And I mean, I hope it's not solely to help kids pass an MCAS test, because I think learning is much more than just trying to pass a standardized test. I just don't agree with that. I, for one, personally was never good at standardized tests, but I got excellent grades while I was in school. So I don't think, you know, someone's ability to pass a standardized test truly tests somebody's knowledge. And I don't think, you know, curriculum should be centered around that. And I don't think that was really discussed too much last week. So that would probably be a question that I would have for them again.
I agree with you know, with you on that, Mike. There are a lot of questions on because for years we were hearing, like even from New Bedford High, that our students were better prepared than even the you know, the existing students there, and therefore there was always a race to get our you know, youngsters in there, students in their schools, because they did well on the MCAS and it made them look good. And that's what we're hearing for years. All of a sudden we hear that it's the opposite, but I'm not seeing any data to really prove that.
I guess what I was really struck by in their budget is just the number of teachers it takes to educate one kid. You know,
Thank you.
it was
Gail.
pretty, it's really amazing.
I asked that
And
question.
granted, I'm an old lady, you know, I mean, I go back to, I had one teacher for practically every grade I was in, and I did great in school.
Gail,
And now you have interventionists and specialists and team leaders and all this stuff,
I
and they're
totally
doing
agree.
bad. So I don't know. That was amazing to me. That was a real eye opener.
Gail, I totally agree with you on that, because during last week's meeting, at one point, I'm sitting there and I'm saying to myself, I'm like, so based on how many people we need to teach kids, how on earth did all of us that are in this meeting get to where we are today?
I know.
It's almost impossible, right? I mean, how did we
Yeah.
get this far?
More chiefs than Indians.
Right.
The answer is going to be, Mike, that the rules were different back then,
Oh.
right? Like, I'm speculating. I'm
Well, there
not
was
an
no
educator.
MCAS,
speculating
that's for
too.
sure.
Right.
There's no MCAS.
I'm glad
but,
there was
I mean,
no
think about it.
MCAS.
You know, you know, back in the day, you could kind of segregate the kids, and you can't do any of that now, right? And so you've got kids who are disruptive, and you can't put all the disruptive kids together, and so that pulls from the teacher's attention there, and all the other kids are, you know, get behind or you know, get distracted. But you can't change that mix, right? Like, that's the one thing I hear from lots of people is, you know, you've got everybody in the room, and if you've got a disruptive kid, the teacher has to focus on that child because they're disrupting everything else. And then I don't know how the learning continues. Let me put it that way. How does the learning continue in that?
Well,
And
I don't know, but I mean, we must
were
have had
different back then
disruptive
for us.
kids in our classes back in the day. I mean, I don't know.
yeah, and you
It's-
shove them to the principal.
And they got
and you
disciplined.
send them to the principal.
Yeah, Mike,
And
you
they
know all
can't do
about
that anymore.
No.
I don't know.
I may be facetious, but maybe in another year or two, we'll have a request to expand the school parking lot as far as, you know, with so many needed staff coming in.
I don't know.
Okay.
All
I
right,
mean,
so
for someone, I mean,
back on track. So I think, so Julie, you covered all the updates for us. I think we got our schedule in place. Is there any old business that anybody wants to bring up?
Actually, I have a couple of things. A few meetings ago, I asked for information from the CARES Act, the funds that came to the town and where they went. And I haven't seen anything about that. And number two, when we were looking at golf, I asked about debt levels, and I think Julie said, oh, I'll just get you all the debt levels. I haven't seen that yet either, so. I'm interested in both those things. Thank you.
All right.
Oh,
I wonder if I have that right in my mailbox.
you want to start talking about CARES while you're looking for that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, that's all on me. I apologize. I'm short-staffed right now. Getting what was done in FY, we're in FY, okay, we're in FY 21. Getting what we received in 187, we got in FY 20, we got $187,000.
Okay.
Getting you what that was spent on, that's easy. That's been submitted and given back. But what we've spent in CARES as of today, the list just keeps growing. It's almost impossible to keep up with. We're currently working on that to keep up to date. But that's just always an ongoing list. Next week I can give you as of what I have, but it will never be fully updated. There's just always things coming in constantly.
You know, I guess I just want a general idea. What did we get and what departments got it? You
Majority
know,
of
I
it-
don't need to look at individual invoices and all that detail. I just want a really big picture.
Oh, that is so easy because what I did when I created it, there's a special fund for CARES. What I've done is I created a separate fund for PPE and safety equipment, a separate expense line for update on buildings, a separate line just for ballots for the clerk's office. Everything's pretty separated.
Yep.
And honestly, majority of things coming through now are all from the chief, is for PPE, cleaning and safety equipment, him
Yeah.
updating his trailer. And the only other things that will come through randomly is when the Board of Selectmen approve a big project for EMA or something like that. There's really no behind the scene purchases. It's everything approved by selectmen. So I can give you the breakdown of each expense line and then maybe give you the big projects of that. As like you said, you don't care if there's a $30 purchase for PPE. That's not your concern. It's probably the bigger projects coming
Yep.
through.
Yep.
That's easy to do, giving you just the project and what was spent each line, if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Okay, that's easy. I thought you were looking for every
That's a
single
good
item.
start.
Yeah, well, no, yeah, and then if you have questions, certain ones, but I thought you were looking for every single purchase of every single certain okay. Oh, that's easy. Okay. Start from somewhere.
All right, I have some stuff I'm gonna forward over to you guys now. From the debt stuff.
Just keep in mind too, Gail, what we have in CARES right now, school submits that when something comes through the town, we automatically put it to CARES. But when school submits invoices for CARES, they submit their own warrants, so I cannot change that. So I'm currently working on a $350,000 invoice that the school's allowed to spend. The Board of Selectmen so they can spend up to $350,000. So they've spent that, and I'm working on doing a journal entry for that, but that is broken out separately on a completely separate sheet, so I can give you that. So the number we have.
Okay, please do.
Very
Yeah.
helpful.
Okay. Just keep in mind when I give you those numbers, school CARES will be on a separate sheet that I give you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Mel.
You're welcome, Gail.
Okay, under new business, we have a reserve fund transfer that we have to take care of from the planning department. It's in the amount of $405, and it's to pay a negative balance. And there was an attached bill
Right.
from, it looks like some surveyors. Zenith Land Surveyors is where the bill's from. It looks like there was a balance due of $145.95, and they're requesting $405. Julie, do you have that?
Yep, I do have that. The
Okay,
Board of
so the
Selectmen, met on it on Tuesday and voted to approve the reserve fund transfer.
Okay.
Do we know what those expenses that originally took it negative? I mean, we have the bill for the 100, but there's still 250. 100.
Those advertisements, Sue.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, I mean, they've had a lot of hearings going on this year, way more than they have had in years past. And that's kind of what's put them over the edge for that line item.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the reserve fund transfer?
So move.
Is there a
Second.
second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Okay, motion passes. All right, next is, we got two sets of minutes from February 24th. And what was the other date, Kathy? Oh, March 3rd. Okay, at the February 24th meeting, in attendance were Bob St. Jean, myself, Sue Delgado, Bob Ferrera, John Howcroft, Eric McGlynn, and Gail Rodericks. Do I have a motion to approve these minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes, please.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, with regards to the minutes from March 3rd, in attendance were Bob St. Jean, myself, Sue Delgado, Bob Ferrera, John Howcroft, Eric McGlynn, Ron Melbourne, and Gail Rodericks. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The minutes are approved from both meetings. All right, so next week, April 7th, it looks like we're definitely meeting with Dan from the DPW. And I guess Kathy, maybe we can reach out. So who, would you guys want to have Kristen come in specifically and ask her questions? I think she'd probably be the best one to answer the majority of the questions that we're going to have. Do you think you'd want to talk to anybody else in the school department or just Kristen?
As long as Kristen can answer that question on prioritization, that's mission critical.
Well, I know Paula last week, Paula said that that's like a team decision, right? So hopefully they spoke to them.
Well, I would hope so.
You want me to just ask her and see if she can and who else might be available?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, but Kristen and Dr. Bailey, you know, run the school. I want to know where the priorities of the priorities are.
Yeah.
If the
I
school
think Dr.
committee,
Bailey should attend.
I
Right.
think so, Bob.
if the school committee wants to be there, maybe one representative from the school committee can attend. So they're all represented. And that way nobody's left out that way. So we'll try and do that next week. And then on the 14th, we need to start our deliberations. So we would basically have 2 weeks to deliberate, the 14th and the 21st. When is school vacation week? Is it the 14th or the 21st?
The week of the 21st. It's the week after.
The week of the
second
21st?
one, yeah. And realistically, the 14th is going to be tough for me. So I might not be able to make it.
Okay.
But I can make the 21st. I'll definitely be.
All right, so maybe what we'll do when we start the deliberations is we'll do all the relatively easy budgets that are pretty clear cut, straightforward. We'll get through all those and we'll save the ones that we have. Well, we know it's going to be the school. So we'll save that one for when we're all here. So we can all have our input and discussion with that. And I still have to reach out to the police chief because I would still like to meet in person for those deliberations, so long as everybody's okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Before we leave, I have one question for Julie. Has the new growth figure been revisited or is it the same?
Still the same right now. But I think it will be revisited before we finalize everything.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thanks everybody for attending tonight, and we'll see everybody next week. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes. So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, good night, everybody. We'll
Good
see you next week.
night.
Good
Aye.
night. Thank
Good night, all.
you.